So it's interesting that I cannot tell you how incredibly humble I am, or think myself to be incredibly humble, without being the opposite of what that word actually means or points to. So what true humility is not something I know, not something I can tell you, but it's also strangely sort of like the opposite of what you'd think it would be. So you could say that it's like complete receptivity, or totally accepting and being willing to accept the gift that is presented to us. And we realize that whenever we have an interaction with somebody, whenever somebody offends us, whenever somebody hurts us, whenever we experience any sort of suffering, that the suffering is guidance, and that there might even be symbolism, and you can, journaling is an incredibly amazing tool to use with this, because sometimes you can have an interaction or something that's a little bit disturbing or disrupting, and when you sit down to journal it out, if you look for it, and if you're willing to be open and receive it, and your true intention is to feel better and to really open and feel this suffering, all kinds of insights come loose, and all kinds of ways that things are tied in may come loose, and just like crying it out, expressing it, really letting ourselves let it out, and realizing, like, after you cry, the way you feel, that sort of like pure feeling, or completely like peaceful feeling, that's what it is. And being willing to do that, and being willing to not even admit that you made a mistake, but it's like, I may have mentioned this in a video, I'm not sure if I did or not, but this winter I thought this tractor trailer was turning where I was, and he needed me to move for him and just enter the roadway. But he wasn't, and I ended up pulling out in front of him. And I immediately had this, like, gut reaction, just felt horrible about it. And then, like, watching the thoughts start to spin about how I am as a driver, or how that was, or how he must be feeling, just directly feeling it, and feeling it dissipate into this, like, energy and bliss. Phil has a video about bursting your bubbles, which is an amazing analogy for this, and I'll link it below. But it feels humbling, and it also feels amazing, and I guess that's what stepping out of the ego, or stepping out of thought attachment, just feels like. But we also realize that it's a gift, and everything is for us, and there aren't other awakened people, and awakened people aren't special because they are not, and we are not, and we no longer have to look at people and judge them as like where they are, and how much knowledge they have, and how much spiritual knowledge they have, to truly appreciate their teachings. And it's like the whole world opens up for us. And, you know, some people may criticize modern medicine and say they've made a lot of mistakes over history. They still go on this materialist paradigm. They totally avoid the emotions. They totally avoid the mind-body connection. There's so many criticisms that you can make about it. But at the same time, it is a miraculous wonder, and it is the answer to what so many people are asking for. It's neither of the things we can judge it. And so realizing in the moment that every teaching is from Louise Hay to Jim Newman to all in between, talking about shadow work, expressing and talking about how you don't need to worry about that, it's already done, and whatever else, shooting down different ways that we try to identify or pointing out the importance of accepting ourselves, of loving ourselves. All of these things are for you, and you know when they resonate for you. Do not close yourself off like somebody who refuses to use or utilize modern medicine no matter how bad things get, because they see the flaws in it. Do not refuse yourself any means of information or healing, because it's all for you. Some of the most profound pointers you can take from one teacher and another teacher, and they sound completely opposite. But what non-duality points to is there are no opposites. Nisargadatta said there are opposites, but there's no opposition. It's all open, it's free, it's pure, it's boundless, it's for you. And it's like we are drawn to certain things. And when you have a resonance, you're drawn to certain things. And why it feels so bad to cut ourselves off from what we are naturally drawn to, which we may do early on in life for whatever reasons, or we may perpetually do because we think that our success is found somewhere, and we don't realize that our success is only found, and our fulfillment is only found in the moment. And occasionally that looks mundane to us, and we overlook what a wonder it really is. But it's like the pupil of the eye is a hole that lets awareness in. And it's like this nothingness, and how, it's said nature abhors a vacuum. So it's neither something or nothingness, but awareness is like this complete stillness and this complete nothingness in which this incredible motion seems to happen around, like the eye of a hurricane or the center of a whirlpool. It's still, there's nothing happening there, and yet it's the middle or the birthplace of all that's happening around it. So essentially you're attracting everything, and you're attracting it not for the good of a thought, not for the good of a separate self, but for good with a capital G. And the synchronicity between drawing, as in creating a drawing, or drawing characters, or a mental snapshot, and drawing as in attracting, as in drawing something to us, hit me today. And I was thinking about awareness as an analogy, and how it's almost like a whirlpool sort of opens up, and the center of it is nothing. The center of it is where nothing really happens, and yet the water's falling down into it. And if you made a hole and water was draining and formed a whirlpool, it's where nothing is, and yet it creates this incredible motion. And motion and stillness, awareness is like nothing. It doesn't move, it itself doesn't move, and yet it creates this wondrous movement all around it. And like the pupil of the eye draws in light and is dark itself, non-duality, these things aren't one or the other, they are created together. And speaking of creating and speaking of drawing is in creating. And drawing, like drawing a cartoon, or drawing a piece of art, and drawing as in attracting, observing, just being the nothingness, just being the observer watching the movie. There's no duality between this. So some teachings are pointing to that you are not the doer, you are not in control of this. But this does not mean that you're not creating. It does not exclude that. There's no difference between that. And so I really love the synchronicity between those two meanings of drawing and the original use of drawing as like, you know, you're pulling the pencil, you're making a line. And so many things are simplified, like the source of words often means something like some simple motion, like throwing something or pulling something, or just some like geometric kind of thing. And yet we have this huge like plethora of connotations of words and different ways we get discordant emotions and meanings and interpretations sort of tied up with them. Like, for example, the video I made last summer about the word cringe, how it's like a turning back on itself, like literal cringe. And yet the connotations of cringe may prevent somebody from creating the project that they really want to create. And just as creating, drawing and drawing, just as creating and observing are not two different things, it is completely purifying to create what you want to create. Because the thoughts that get in the way, just like in meditation and pure observation, those thoughts have to be seen, those thoughts have to be discarded. And those limiting beliefs about ourselves, those beliefs that exclude ourselves, say we aren't worthy, those have to go away for us to birth the project that we are inspired to create. So as I was contemplating drawing, I thought back to one of my favorite cartoon strips, Calvin and Hobbes, and I read this strip today, and I want to read you it. It's just Calvin and Hobbes sitting under a tree, and Calvin says to Hobbes, "Why do you suppose we are here?" And Hobbes answers, "Because we walked here." And Calvin says, No, I mean here on Earth." And Hobbes says, "Because Earth can support life." And Calvin says, "No, I mean, why are we anywhere? Why do we exist?" And Hobbes says, "Because we were born." And Calvin says, and gets this big scowl on his face, "Forget it." And Hobbes says, "I will, thank you." It's funny. It's funny on a lot of levels. But it's also really funny to realize that the characters in that strip are there because they were drawn. Literally drawn, inspired. There. They aren't there. They never got there. There was no there. And you are the author. And you're also the reader, the enjoyer of the strip. It's almost beyond, like, plagiarism is no longer possible because this is completely your creation. And once you realize that, you'll never, ever, ever, ever be tempted to plagiarize anything, because everything that you truly create will be authentic and original and never really your own. And yet completely for you.